video is live.
Make sure my hair looks good.
So we'll call this meeting to order for the Broadwater County Commission. The discussion and decision for the award to Silos Recreation Area Management and Operation Agreement has been postponed pending the outcome of interviews. So we will move on to our working meeting discussion about RIDs.
Can I briefly give you an update on the interview process?
Yes.
Is that the topic? The silos have accepted our request for an interview at 10 a.m. on, let me look at my calendar, what date we set it for? February 4th. So Sharon Walker and Debbie Blake will be here at 10 a.m. on February 4th. Unfortunately, Esther Fishbaugh will be traveling out of state and cannot attend in person. She can be here via phone, or she can meet with us on February 3rd at 1:30. I would say probably more like 2 o'clock. So since majority of the
I'm
committee.
available on February 3rd.
I'm okay with that.
I am also. Jerry and Josh.
Yep, I'm available.
And the only one that is not here that was on that committee is Mike Myers, and I don't know if he has anything on the 3rd. I know he had a conflict the afternoon of the 4th, so. We'll set it for the Canyon Ferry Enterprises interview at 2 p.m. on February 3rd. And then interviews with Debbie Blake and Sharon Walker at 10 a.m. on February 4th. And I will confirm that via email once we get back to the office, okay? Thank you.
Right, that's Nicole.
Okay, thanks, Nicole.
What did we ever do without phones?
I really, one of those funky day planners. I'm still. I was kidding, I saw you, I was kidding, being sarcastic. I do both.
Okay.
So you want to lead us on the discussion, Jerry?
So the commission asked to chat about RIDs, and it sounds like just one, kind of a wide-ranging conversation, creation, use, best practices, and whatnot. And I know enough about RIDs to have an intelligent conversation and not an expert, but Jeremiah, who's Faye's, my colleague, has worked on RIDs a lot and is essentially from a practical perspective, probably not the legal perspective, because there are legal ramifications with RIDs, is kind of our in-house expert. So that's why Jeremiah is here. And I think you kind of have an approach, discussion points that you wanted to start out with. But I think before we do that, the commission, Josh, anybody, do you have specific topics you want to touch base on, or do you just want us to jump in and have a conversation?
So if I may, I really want to know from beginning to end, what is our role as a county? Josh and I, Josh is Public Works Director, I believe you've been introduced, roads, and I'm Community Development. So we are usually the first ones to get asked this question on, hey, I want to do an RID in my subdivision, what do I do? And we typically look at each other and go, we need to research it. What do you think? Let's talk about it. And then we go to the commissioners and say, commissioners, what do we do here? That's how we ended up here. We have this, I disseminated this information. We adopted this in 2013, and this was actually vetted by Susan Swimley and Tara Depew. They were both Mako land use attorneys at the time. So we felt like it was probably a good document to be following.
Yeah.
But I want to be sure that we're doing the right thing. And in talking with Jerry, Lewis and Clark County has a whole department that does this. You know, Josh and I have this much time each, so collectively this much time to devote to RIDs, which I realize that's not the public's problem. That's something that we need to figure out. So for both of us to try and tag team on how do we pursue RIDs, how do we manage RIDs, how do we assist the public in creating an RID? I know that's very vague, but I'm an open book. An open blank book at this point.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. I didn't realize you guys had this, so I think this is a great starting point. But I will say that this will need to be updated because there's been some changes with actually the last 3 legislative cycles related to RIDs. But I think having a procedure that can just be handed to landowners or developers or even homeowners associations would be a good start. So even taking this document and connecting with a bond council and having them look at current MCA and then updating this procedures would be start number 1. There's a couple of bonding councils in the state that are the experts in this. Dorsey Whitney does that, and Jackson Murdo Grant are kind of the 2 bond councils that set up 95% of the RIDs and assist with that. And I actually connected with, and I can forward this information on, but Nathan Bilyeu is one of the attorneys at Jackson Murdo. And he works with Gallatin County. He does some work in Lewis and Clark County. He's assisted us in Jefferson County. So I'm in the areas around there helping create RIDs and the assessment structure and the process. So, connecting with one of those 2 firms on just, hey, we have this procedures, help us update the MCA. Because just perusing this, I mean, a lot of the language is there, it just needs to be updated in the process. So aside from that though, that you have some options. I think Lewis and Clark County is kind of on the extreme end. Every subdivision approved has to have an RID attached to it.
That was going to be one of my questions. Can that be a condition of approval?
In that county, they do it. Yeah, every RID approved, they have, or excuse me, every subdivision approved, they have an RID, no matter the lot size that goes along with it. Okay. And they start the assessments from year 1. And the way they do that and how they're allowed to do it is they condition the RID as maintenance, where, the county's not taking on any maintenance, neither is the homeowners association. The RID itself is paying for maintenance. So they include snow removal and, we're gonna gravel the roads in 5 years, or like the subdivision I live in, they established it when they created the subdivision in anticipation of paving all the roads at year 7. So at year 7, they just came through and paved our roads. Most of the landowners didn't even know that there was an RID established. We were paying for that to get that service done down the road. So that can be a condition of every subdivision. Now, on your point though, then you start creating that with every subdivision, the county's still administering and managing those RIDs. So they have a whole division in personnel that are dealing with the maintenance plans and the contracts associated with all that work and making sure that it is being accomplished. So there's the fallout of that. The clerk and recorder has to, administer the tax rolls and the assessments and all that stuff. So there's a lot of work associated with that. And unfortunately, the county can charge up 5% or up to $500 for administration on the clerk and recorder side. So there's not a lot that goes to assisting that on the financial side. But you can build in like the associated work costs, engineering, things like that with each RID to help offset the cost of that. And that's what Lewis and Clark County does. They have some fee that they are kind of charging in addition to the administration on each one, so that way they're not just having out of pocket having to pay for all these employees and such that work there.
So that's an additional fee to that 5% administration fee that they are allowed to charge
Yeah.
with, I mean, MCA allows for that, okay.
Yeah, you build it into the cost. You know, typically, like when we do a cost estimate for our RID, the bond council, you know, and our engineering fees and things like that are all separate line items that are built into the overall cost of the
Okay.
project. So that way the district is repaying that stuff and you're not having to pay that out of pocket. You do up front, but when the district's established, then you can recoup those
that.
costs
Okay.
overall. Yep. So, but if you don't do that, you know, the process moving forward, the commissioners, you have the authority to just create a district. Now there's really two options for counties. You have a rural improvement district and the maintenance to go along with it. So you can do an RID/RMD. And those are typically established at the same time. The maintenance is in support of the improvements, basically. But what you cannot do is a separate rural maintenance district. They have removed that, so you can't just do an RMD. Communities, cities can. They can do street maintenance districts, but not on the county side. Now, I would say 90% of the districts are actually improvement districts, and you're looking at future improvements. Okay, we're gonna, you know, we're gonna grade this county road that accesses this subdivision for the next 5 years, and then at year 6 we're gonna gravel that road. That's an improvement. So we can set up the improvement district now. We put the maintenance district with it. The maintenance district portion is paying for the grading every year. The improvement portion assessments are paying for that gravel, you know, that we put on the roads at year 6.
So Jeremiah, you're saying that we, as a commission, can create that improvement district without the petition process?
No, you have to go through the, well, you can do it without the petition process, yes. You can actually, by commission vote, say we're gonna do this RID, here's the assessment structure, and then you do the resolution of intent. That goes to all the affected landowners, and then they have the right to protest at that point in time. If it's more than 50% protest out, you don't have the authority to do it. Now there's some language in the MCA related to petitions, and this was added because a lot of counties, and actually I had worked with Jefferson County at the time, they were doing the commission approved. They just hear from a subdivision, hey, we want to do an RID, and the commission would invest in my time, the bond council time, they'd pay all this money to get this district established, and then they would do the resolution of intent to create it, and the landowners would vote out. And then the county was stuck with these thousands of dollars in bills and no addition. So they added the language of the petition. So every district can be formed by petition or commission initiation.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
Quick? And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the beauty of having the homeowners submit the petition is theoretically they're proving to you that you've got the percentage to avoid it being protested out. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The only problem with that though is still on the petition side. And you guys actually have a petition form. I mean, this is pretty typical. But what I've seen is the landowners go to a contractor, they get a cost for grading the road, graveling it. It doesn't have the administrative fees, it doesn't have bid packages, it doesn't have bond counsel or any of these other fees. That could be 20–30% of the cost. So then the counties move forward because there was a petition, and then they do the intention and they come up with the assessment fee and such, and then the landowner's like, well, that's way more than we had, and then it still falls apart. So it can go away. I think the point being that you want to be clear on the costs, and you want to have a high landowner support to make sure that the county is not financially losing any money if the district doesn't go anywhere. But they are a great tool to pay for improvements or maintenance directly related to the landowners that it serves. And oftentimes, you know, you can only do so much with your money, and those landowners want more, and they want the road paved and all this stuff, and so they're kind of putting their money where their mouth is, you know, they're paying for what they get in that area.
So then Jeremiah, so say we're creating a district in an established subdivision, has been no money set aside to start this project. What are some of the options, I guess? One is, I guess, to wait till they have built up the fund, but reading the Lewis and Clark County, they have the option of using a revolving fund or bonding.
Yeah, so you can, when you create an improvement district, you're setting up the assessment structure. So you have a project already planned, and let's say, okay, we're gonna pave the roads, it's $1 million. So you have the option of starting the assessment now and saying, we're gonna do this at year 6, and we're gonna start charging everybody $100 a year, and we're gonna build up this $1 million plus interest at the time, so we can do this at year 6. So you're not borrowing anything. The district's creating reserves and then using the money. Or the other option is financing it up front, and the district is the repayment mechanism on the back end. So you can go, typically if it's under $500,000, you just get, you know, SRF loan or some loan. Over that, then we look at selling bonds for the amount of the cost. So then you have the pool of money up front, you build the infrastructure right away, and then you're repaying it on a repayment cycle that you establish, the district establishes when they set
That's
up.
where you said you could do an RMD and an RID though, so you could set it up with the maintenance district until you get to year 6, to where you're not really taxing the road department's budget, because we've had 260% plus a growth rate over 2019, and our budget really hasn't significantly grown to match that growth rate. But if you had an RMD, then that would help cover the maintenance for that section until the RID hits.
Yep. Yep.
So typically the county sell the bond, or do they go to, say, Board of Investments or something like that to get the bond?
Typically, the bond council brings in a financial advisor, and oftentimes it's D.A. Davidson, and they help us on the open
Something like
market.
that.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's the purpose of hiring, or not hiring, but I guess we're hiring, we're paying a service, the bond council.
Yep.
And they take care of that part of it. So then that way, the work is getting done before the money is actually there from the residents. Correct? I mean, instead of doing it like in your situation, where you're just paying, and then when that year hits, you do the work. If people come forward to us, which is typically the case so far, they bring in RID because they want the work done now.
Yep.
They've not collected the fees now, so that's where we would need to bring in the bond council.
Yep.
Am I understanding that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and
All right.
really with, no matter what, you bring in the bond council because they help with the language of the resolution to create the district and the assessment structures and how it best, and we support them in the area, the mapping of the area that serves the project. And we also help with, you know, how best, you know, because there is some language in the MCA on, you know, it is, the improvements need to be, everyone associated with assessments need to receive this equal benefit. Now, equal, what really is that? There has to be a perceived benefit though. You cannot assess a landowner that's not going to be served by that road ever within the RID. So that's kind of where we look at, okay, this is our section of roads, and these are all the land parcels that benefit, and we draw up the map, and then we do all the geocodes and pull together that information, and then the bond council does the, you know, the resolution to create the district. They attach our maps, they work with you on how do you want the assessments, and we kind of go back and forth on, you know, what you need to do the project and what can be, you know, the landowners can actually afford there as well. And then before this is ever submitted as an intent to create the district to the landowners, you're kind of, everyone's comfortable with, okay, this is what we have. And I've done some where we've had a project and, you know, we had a dollar amount, $1 million, and so we had to set it up around that. And then I've done other projects where, like a community said, we feel that our taxpayers can only afford $70 a year. So then we back out and say, okay, at $70 a year over a 20-year repay, you can only do this amount of work, and then we structure a project around that amount of work as well. So there's a million different ways to go about it, but the bond council, unless you have like Lewis and Clark County where they have their attorneys and they have a whole RID, they know how to do this, they help make sure you're meeting the MCA when you prepare this. So it's good to have them on board.
So the first step necessarily would not always be the landowners coming forward with a petition to say, we want to improve this road.
Doesn't have to be, no.
Okay.
No, if you have an area where you want to create a district, the commission
The
can
commission
start.
can do that.
Yep.
They have to have 51% buy-in, or is it 60% per MCA?
No, it's actually 50%, yeah.
So
Yep.
50, not 51.
If the way the districts work is it's a protest, so the landowners, everyone that, however you assess the parcels, and there's a few different options there, they get a vote essentially, but they have to come in and physically protest out. And if 50% protest out, you cannot create the district.
So can I ask a question? This is kind of a sidebar conversation because I was curious about it. One of our conditions of approval and a commission required covenant is in these new subdivisions, they are waiving their right to protest the creation of an RID for parks, water, sewer, roads, any of that. So they're waiving that right to protest. So if the commissioners came in and said, we want to create an RID on Smith Road in a subdivision, and those landowners have purchased that property, they have the covenants with the commission required covenants that they're waiving their right to protest, they don't get to protest, correct?
No.
Okay.
So they're getting a notice that they're getting an RID, but they
Okay.
have no a vote, I guess,
Okay.
in protest on that RID.
Okay.
Yep.
If somebody obviously would just want to make sure you document the number of lots who fall each,
Mhm.
whether it's one subdivision, multiple subdivision, how many lots are affected by each of those, so you can calculate. Or is the potential protest way below 50 or not?
Okay.
And I think that would be part of the whole discussion of creating the RID, so
Mhm.
benefiting properties.
Now, there's one other option you have, which is called a special district. And this was where there was some revisions in the MCA where they took the maintenance RMD away and they just created this blanket special district. And it can be for water, wastewater, street, roads, lights,
Fire protection.
fire protection. I mean, there's a million different special districts you can create. But you can do one on roads. Now, the special district for roads is purely only for maintenance. So if you had no plans to do future improvements on a road section and you were purely just looking for money to grade the road on a yearly basis and provide snow removal, what have you, then that's where you would use the special district for roads in that case. But they're a little bit more complicated to move forward with, and there's different percentages of protest. I guess if you have a protest between 10 and 50%, you actually have to have an election is held on the question to create the district, and then the same thing, like the commissioners can initiate it and start it, or you can have landowner petitions started. But there's just certain protest percentages that change how you do it. So they're a little bit harder to move forward with, but if you're only looking for maintenance and that's it, that's the avenue for that. But typically, you can, with these, the improvement district, you gotta think improvement. We're upgrading, we're doing, that's pretty loose. I mean, you can like I said, you can say, hey, we're gonna just maintain this road for 5 years, and then at year 6, we're gonna put new 6-inch layer of gravel. That's improvement, and so we can create the district, RID, RMD right now. We start assessing everyone, you know, $100 a year or whatever it is. We're using the money for maintenance and we're building reserves, and then they get their improvements at some year. And really all you have to do is you put together your maintenance improvement plan that goes with the resolution, and, you know, the cost estimates with it in the district, and that's, you know, how it's established, so.
Okay.
It's a pretty straightforward process. But as, you know, like I said, we want to definitely update this, and the petition from the landowners, you know, we want to make sure that, I think that actually the MCA, it's somewhere around 85%, there's some, you know, that you have to have support of all the landowners affected, just because so many of those petitions look good, landowners are supporting, and then when you actually create the district and start the work, or get to the point of creating the district, the landlord say, well, that's way more than I thought it was gonna be, and we don't support it.
Which will most likely be the case once we start factoring into bond council, engineering work, the administration fee. That's pretty easy to figure out. It's 5%. I mean, but bond council, we really don't know what that will be, right?
Yeah, we have some idea. I mean, typically they're $12,000–15,000, something like that.
Oh,
Yeah. So I mean, we can, you know, we can put, and there's even, you know, there's some percentages of reserves that have to go in there. You know, there's when you create the RID, you're basically putting away 1 year's assessments into a reserve account. That way, if people protest their taxes or don't pay their taxes, you have that money in reserve. So you factor in reserve amounts, you know, if there's some engineering associated with it, the financial advisor, you know, we can have some idea of cost that we can say, okay, you guys plan on 25% more of your construction cost or whatever it is that you need to anticipate before you ever put your petition together.
So I guess with that dollar amount, a lot of our, not a lot, I've only had a couple of RAD discussions with citizens. They've been for minor road improvements, maybe, you know, some gravel, maybe, you know, $20,000 worth of gravel and some grading applied, you know, done on the road. Snow removal has been a discussion, the application of dust abatement, like a mag chloride. So those you're looking at a much less expense. So that might be difficult to sell, if you will, to the public. If you're looking at, say, the application of mag chloride, what is it, say 5,000 per mile?
500 a mile roughly.
So,
Probably 6 foot.
okay, so then we're going to be adding on to that an additional 12,000 for bond council. I mean, is that?
It might be a little less, but it's the same work for
Yeah.
them. You know, there's
Exactly,
they're still having to put together the resolution. There's still the maps. There's still the you know, the lots that are assessed. So there's not a huge economy of scale based on project side, the amount of work that goes
Sure.
into it. And in those situations, it is, you know, it's not great because all of a sudden their assessment could be double the amount because of the additional fees. But they do have the option of creating a homeowners association, or maybe the homeowners association increases their assessments and they pay for it themselves and do the work themselves. But typically, that's not working if they're coming to the county and saying, we need help with an RID. You know, people are not paying into it. It's not being managed right, whatever. I mean, if they have a homeowners association that's active and it's working well, they're making their improvements, things are going well. So yes, those small projects that it might not be feasible to do an RID.
Clearly for paving, when you're talking, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, it makes sense. And then you're building in this percentage, but when the percentage is potentially double or triple what the cost of improvements are, that's going to be a hard sell for the public. But that's on them to make, that's on the citizens, the landowners to make that determination.
Yep.
I mean, you know, okay, we can do this for you, we can assist you with it, but let me just tell you, we're going to have this additional cost, because then we're going to have to build into an engineering cost also, correct? I mean, if I,
Engineering costs and 1 year reserve.
yeah, I mean, you
Yep.
know, so a $5,000 or even a $10,000 project could potentially end up costing them $30,000
Yeah,
in,
yep.
in tax dollars to only realize a $10,000 benefit. I mean, I realize that there's a benefit to your work to the bond council. I'm not trying to dismiss that. I'm just saying like the actual.
Oh, yeah, the actual, yeah, I mean, they
Okay.
could be, yeah,
And-
twice or 3 times as much of the project is just in, let's say, administrative costs related to doing it. And, yeah, they're not getting any benefit out of that outside of, the benefit is the county takes on, you know, the assessment, they're taking on the administration of it, they're, you know, you guys are administering the funds. And so the homeowners association does not have to worry about that. You know, they come to you and you say, okay, well, the maintenance plan we set up is every 4 years, we're gonna mag the road and we're gonna grade it every year. And this is what we're doing, you know, if you guys want more, let's look at, you know, adjusting your maintenance portion of the assessment and we can add more. But yeah, that's, you know, the luxury of it. There's additional cost that they have to pay for, but they don't have to worry about administering all that.
So on the special districts, I know it's for maintenance, you said it was maintenance only, how strict or how closely watched is it for improvements? Like you said, anything that can be, like if you haul gravel for fill, for a top fill, that's an improvement, it's not maintenance. Is that above and beyond the scope, and how regulated is that?
It's pretty loose. I mean, it's a big gray area. But typically the ones I've been involved with, if we're looking at anything like that where we're hauling in, we just do the improvement district because it's just easier to create and get the assessments established. So if a subdivision, I'm doing one in Valley County right now, they're working on with some landowners. The county does not maintain their roads. They can't get a homeowners association together to do anything down there. They just want roads graded. They haven't been graded in 5 or 6 years. They're potholed up, blown out. They just want them graded. So in that case, they don't have the money to put down gravel to build anything. They just want, the landowners want to pay $20 a year and just get the roads graded. So in that case, doing a special district is better suited for that.
So for the special districts, do you have to have a bond council?
Yeah, because it's the same type of approach where you're doing a resolution to create it. Yeah, it's a similar process, actually a little bit more complicated to get them set up.
So every RID and every SID needs a bond council.
Yeah, until the county attorney is comfortable with
Sure.
it.
Okay.
Yeah. I've probably done a dozen or so in Jefferson County, and their attorney never wanted to deal with them, so they just built on the costs. I mean, they're pretty straightforward. I mean, this resolution is not hard, but just making sure, because what happens is you inevitably will have somebody that does not agree with this. And if you don't meet the MCA, they can, file suit and get that thrown out, and then your district goes away. And what you don't want is to be right in the middle of construction, have bonds sold, and have a district go away. Because then the county's on the hook for the improvements. So we want to make sure that this is defensible in court. That's the biggest thing associated with this.
Basically what it boils down to, if it's not a full district or if it's not a full subdivision, it doesn't make sense to form an RID. Like the one example we have had for a petition, it's half of one short road, it's less than a mile. And for them to be able to try to form an RID with all the additional costs, this wouldn't be a cost-effective option for them, since they're not looking for paving, they just wanted dust control.
Yeah, it would, depending on the lots, the number of lots served, it probably wouldn't be
About 9 lots.
feasible for them.
Yeah, I mean, economies of scale is,
But if you were to, there was one implemented for the entire subdivision out there where they got a larger lot size to spread the associated cost across, then all of a sudden it would be a viable option.
Yep, yep. Yeah, typically, I think the best way to look at it is if you had a county road, you know, let's say from a main intersection, and then it serves the subdivision, is you take from that main intersection, you include the county road, you include the roads within the subdivision, and then, you know, everybody served by that county road is paying a percentage of all that work.
And that was my other question about perceived improvement too. Like this, in this one example, you have the main road and there's multiple lots on there. Some of the lots, there's two different roads that intersect that, and the question that these individuals had was they were wanting to basically assess the RID against everybody whose property bordered said road, even if their access, their easement to their property wasn't onto that road.
Yeah.
And that to me, and Nicole and I have talked, that would be kind of a sticky situation because they don't have to travel that road. They're on these two roads, there is another access. They could go out in a different direction and never actually travel on this road. So a perceived improvement, it may not be a perceived improvement to them.
Yeah, and I would say, well, there's very limited assessment methods that you can do when you create a district, and one of them is lineal footage of the road improvements. I never see that actually initiated because the road seems to always serve properties that are not abutted, or it's not fair to a landowner that has a corner lot to pay twice because they just own a corner lot in there. So you can do that. You can do the value of the property. So based on the assessed value, they pay a percentage, which also is not fair because if you have a big house and your neighbor has a trailer house, it doesn't mean that you're not having the same amount of impact on the road. So not really fair either. You can also assess by area of lot. Again, just because you have a bigger lot doesn't mean you're having more vehicle traffic on the road. So the other option is per lot. I'd say 95% of the time it's a per lot basis, because then everybody that is going to get a benefit that drives the road pays per lot. Now you can do the per lot assessments in lots of different ways, and so what I've seen is we break it up in multiple phases. So that first segment of road up to the first intersection, everybody in the district pays for. So everyone has a per lot for that first portion. And then from segment B, you know, we lose these intersection folks because they're not benefiting, but then the rest of it is all these people. And then in the subdivision, I mean, you can really get down, but usually once you get into the subdivision, it's like, okay, maybe you have this area is this road, this area is this road, or you just do it all. But yeah, you know, you can do assessments, multiple assessments of these types within the district. The more you do, the more administration it is and harder to manage and keeping track of that. But you can really break it down if you want to. I would say typically the ones I see is it's 2 to 3 per lot assessments. You know, phase A, everyone pays $35. Phase B is $35 plus another 20, and then, you know, whatever it is like that.
Okay, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, I think just trying to break it all down on how does this work. I think that in the majority of these, I do feel can be solved by an HOA.
Yep.
And granted, you're always going to have one or two holdouts. People that say, I'm not paying that. You know, I'm still going to get the benefit of driving the road. No, I'm not paying my $100 dues. Okay, fine. You know, I mean, everybody else just, I guess, have to pitch in and cover that proportionate share. But, okay, so it really has to do a lot with the amount of the improvement, I think, to determine whether or not it's feasible for a landowner.
Yep. Amount and total number of participants.
Yep, yeah, participants, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, well, I know one of my employees, he tried to get an RID set up in his subdivision in Jefferson County because they couldn't get anybody to contribute to the HOA, Jonathan. They only have 12 lots. So he got costs, from a contractor, he built in all these fees, and they, then he went around with a petition trying to get the landowners. They're like, well, we're not paying $500 a year either. He's like, well, you don't pay anything. Like, we need to get the roads graded, so we either form this HOA or this is the fee you need to pay. He couldn't get enough signatures for a petition. They can't get the HOA to kick in, so there's still nothing's happening out there. It is what it is.
Poor Brittany is, yeah.
God, I keep waiting for you to come up with this like magic answer. And I'm like, something.
Well, it's that until you go to the other end, like Lewis and Clark County. I mean, every subdivision has it, and the county administers it, and it's just.
Well, in a perfect world, I mean, I love that idea, and Commissioner Fulford and I have talked about this previously on, how nice would that be? Because I get a considerable amount of calls from subdivision residents wondering, when is the county going to come and improve my road? Well, let me tell you, we're not, because this is a subdivision road. Even though it's open to the public and anybody can drive it, it's all your responsibility to maintain that. It sure would be nice to be able to have that conversation. And just like when you're buying your house and it's already built in, it's already a part of your taxes. I mean, it's already built into your budget that you're writing the check for this.
Yep.
So I love this idea. We're clearly not there because we don't have staff to be able to administer this. But in a perfect world, that's what I would love to see us doing.
I second that as well.
Along those lines, so say this is a developing subdivision, lots haven't been sold, the developer still owns them all. And the RID has been created as a condition of approval of the subdivision. What happens, is the developer responsible for making that RID payment until the lot sells?
Yeah, because he's making tax payments on there, and it's just.
So he'd have to make that payment
Yep.
until the lot sells and it transfers to the new one.
Yep.
Okay.
And the right to waive your protest actually came from, not because, it became from that issue. Because what was happening is developers would come in and they'd sell 30% of the lots. They'd still have 60%, and they'd be like, oh, we're gonna do this massive RID and dump it on everybody. And then they have 60% vote, they have the only say, they approve it, and then they sell all their lots and everyone else is stuck with these massive RID bills. I've seen some $1,200-$1,500 a year just in an RID that a developer drove because he owned all the lots. So that condition of protest, so the county is you guys are kind of in control of what you feel is the best interest of that subdivision, not the developer, because he would come in and when he owns 55%, hey, we're going to do this RID, we're going to make all these improvements, and then he dumps all the lots, and then everyone is saddled with this massive bill, which is not fair either.
Yeah.
He gets paved roads, he makes more money, everyone pays later on.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of landowners think that an RID is a tax. I mean, because it's listed on your tax roll, it's not. It's actually a lien on your property. So it's filed as a lien, not the maintenance portion, but the improvement portion. So you have, when you do the financing, you say, okay, typically most of the improvement districts are based on 20-year repay. So you have the maintenance and your improvements on a 20-year repay. You break that down to a cost right now. That value is $3,500 per lot. So you actually have a lien on your lot for $3,500 for RID number one, and you cannot sell that property until the lien's paid off. So the landowners then pay it off. So they do have the right on the improvement side. They can come in and make their payment right up front and not have to pay it on their taxes. They could come in and write you a check for $3,500. That gets them out of the improvement side. Now the maintenance is still assessed every year. You can't buy yourself out of the maintenance. They still pay that. But if they wanted to take themselves out of the improvement, they could. Along those lines, it's a a lien, so then when they sell the property, it's paid off, their portion, so the new landowner only assumes the maintenance portion of it, not the improvement portion of it.
So do you do the 20-year repays on the special district?
The special district is, just because it's only for maintenance, a yearly assessment, there's no real repay, you can just keep going forever with that.
Okay.
On the special district and the maintenance portion of the RID, the commission evaluates those assessments every year, and they can adjust the rates just by commission vote. You know, typically it's, you know, if the funds are maybe falling short or snow plowing's costing more, they can come in and say, we're gonna up everyone's assessment on special district number 1, $5 a year to cover these costs, and they take commission action on it. And they actually, most counties don't, but they're supposed to, by law, reassess maintenance in special districts every year. Yeah. And it gives you some flexibility, like on a special district, if their landowners come in and say, hey, we, in addition to snowplow, you know, let's, you know, we need to grade the ditches because we're having drainage issues, and, you know, so that you guys look at it and say, okay, let's add it. We need an extra few $1,000, let's add $10 a year to the assessments, and we make those changes, so. Yeah. The improvement, just think of it as, you know, you're paying for the project, and you're either financing it and doing it later on by building reserves, or borrowing money right now and making the improvements right now.
Okay.
I think the one thing that I would throw out, especially with new subdivisions, and not that I'm advocating you do this, but the reality is that unless the homeowners association, if they have one, is really active in maintaining those roads, it's way cheaper to keep them up from the day that they're approved. You know, the engineer goes out and says, yep, they meet county standards. It's going to be way less expensive to keep them at that standard than to come back in 5 to 10 years and have to rebuild them or do whatever. So
That's where we're at.
Yeah. Do you guys have a lot of county road in subdivisions, or is it?
Almost none.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
the one area that we've had the petition for is a subdivision that's got perimeter roads around it, and then this one's kind of a nightmare for the maintenance portion, because there are 3 or 4 roads inside, some of that are county roads, some of the roads is only half of the county, or half of the road is a county road, like half a Homestead Road is, A.B. Cook is, a portion of Beaver is, Tea Kettle is, and then all the rest of it's not. So this is the one area that's kind of drove this meeting. Is it's kind of a special circumstance in itself. It's one of the only, or probably the only one subdivision I can think of that has, other than Rolling Glen Ranch Road that runs through the center of the subdivision, and then Price Road is a feeder road. But other than that, that's really the only ones that we have.
Yeah, there was a small period of time, like 2000 to 2001, I believe, maybe even 2002, where the commission was accepting the roads as county roads with every subdivision. And then they were like, whoa, 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 what are we doing? we didn't realize, you know, because they thought that at the time that was the answer to this maintenance issue that we were running into. That, oh, well, if the county just accept these roads, we can, you know, get the fuel tax, all of this, but then also the other side of that, manpower, you know, machinery, equipment, you know, material, all of it. So they stopped doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that there's one. I think there's one other very, very small one in southern Broadwater County that you probably never hear from because there's 5 residents, and you know, but no.
Yeah, that's
no.
good. A lot of these I created in Jefferson County was because back in the late 70s, early 80s, the commission accepted every subdivision in the north part of the county, the county roads, and so they have done nothing. The county's tried to maintain them, but they don't have money to make improvements. And then, you know, over the last 10 years, the roads have gotten so bad that they've had to invest. Well, the landowners come and say, well, this is county roads, you just need to pay for it. They don't have the money, so they've used the RID avenue to make improvements on a lot of subdivisions to get them up to speed. Now, unfortunately, they're still saddled with maintenance, but when they created the RID, they have the RMD, so then it's given the county a bit more flexibility to contract out a lot of that work, you know, snow plowing and things like that, the district's paying for the maintenance and the county can, even though it's still county road, they're still overseeing it, but they're at least not having the manpower and resources going just to maintaining subdivisions and such.
Right. Good.
But it is something, so, creating the districts early on, I mean, that's, I guess, something that the commission can decide and you can look at what Lewis and Clark County has done. It's, like I said, it's great to get things established and help, because what's gonna happen, all these subdivisions they're gonna build nice roads meeting county standards, and 20 years from now, they're gonna come back and say, our roads are crap, we haven't done anything, we need help, and then, there's a big investment. But if they're maintained and kept up to speed, they're anticipating, and maybe they're doing paving later on or whatever, they're just making sure that it's cheaper later on. But then you have lots of RIDs to deal with and administer, so.
How often are maintenance districts set up without or improvement district?
You can't just do a maintenance
Okay, it has to be
district.
an RID.
Only the cities can, that's, yeah, so
But
the
that's where
city
you can
can.
do it under a special
District, yeah. And I would say it's actually pretty rare, because unless you're like Lewis and Clark County, most of these is your situations where you have roads that are failing, landowners, wanting to do something, and so you need to make some investment and improvement to the project, and so you're creating the RID, and then you're just attaching an RMD to go along with it for preserved maintenance on your improvements.
Okay, so if you have residents that don't wanna do this RID with RMD, and if they don't wanna do an HOA, then it's just, the cost of the people who do wanna fix the road at this point?
Well, the process would be the commission could still create the district, and you would have a letter of intent that would go out to every landowner within the district, and they would then have the option to protest out. And you can kind of, I wouldn't say you can force it on people, but these districts, it's not by vote, so people don't just check and mail it in. They have to come in and physically protest. So to get 50% of those landowners to come in and physically protest out is not as easy as somebody just checking off a box and voting and mailing in. So oftentimes those folks that may not be supportive of it don't spend the time to come in and protest out. So then the commission could still approve that district if they didn't get people to protest out.
Okay. But the commission has to have a desire and a reason. I mean, this commission,
Yeah.
any commission, I can't imagine them just saying, you know what, we want to create an RID on this subdivision road. We feel like it's a good idea. I mean, you've got to really be able to stomach the consequences of that. There's got to be some pretty good reason why. Do they have to have justification? Do they have to put justification in some type of a narrative as to why they're creating it there? Public health and safety, I suppose. Is that always just going to be what they're gonna?
There's language in the resolution, and I think within the minutes of even considering the district, they would want to be discussion. There's
Okay.
deferred maintenance on the roads. It is a safety issue, or we've heard from a certain percentage of landowners, so we want to investigate the possibility. There would be something associated with getting it started, and then within the resolution, if you ever got to that point, there's a full list of the improvements and what you're doing and all of that.
And why
stuff.
for justification. So okay, with that being said, if the commission are continuously hearing from residents of a subdivision that we need our roads improved, why would the commission create this RID and not say, okay, landowners, go ahead and create the petition? When would be the instance, am I making myself clear,
Yeah.
on why would they make that declaration as opposed to saying, okay, we're tired of seeing you at the commission meeting, go ahead and create the petition? Does that happen very often in other counties, that the commission just creates it outside of the initial creation of the subdivision as far as a condition of approval, but that the commissioners can actually say, okay, we're going to do this.
The only circumstances I've seen is when when it's county road within the subdivision.
Okay.
So the county has some interest in it. When it's a public road in the subdivision, typically the commission just waits for,
Okay.
we hear your frustrations. We will work with you if you want to do something. Create this petition and get, I think it's 85% signatures on it now,
Mhm.
of the
That's what I
owners to
read.
initiate it. And, keep in mind that you're gonna have they can create the petition however they want, but if they're wanting to get some improvements, they can give a contractor cost, and you can give them some ideas of what it would be for the reserve account and financial advisor and all this stuff, and then they can kind of craft up based on the assessments and get some signatures
Okay.
there. And so we can help them put together a realistic proposal, and I think that's where a lot of the separation is, I've seen, is because these petitions, the county commissioners just say, well, put this petition together and you guys come back with 85%, they do, and it still doesn't go anywhere, because I think we can work with the landowners in the subdivision and say, okay, put the petition together, but also look at what's feasible, what can you guys afford? Can you afford $500 a year, or are you only talking $100 a year? And then that almost helps them craft the project that they can accomplish there. Maybe they want pavement, but they can't pay $1,000 a year, so they're gonna get gravel at $500 a year. But if they just come in and get a paving contractor's price and roll with it, when you guys go to try and create the district, and they get sticker shock from those prices, they may, not even have, it may not go anywhere. So there's work with helping them in the petition
Mhm.
to help them be successful.
And to understand the whole, okay.
Yep.
I could just envision a couple of residents, no one in particular, I'm just, saying, I could envision residents coming to this commission and saying, I want you to create an RID, do that. What would be the reason for them to say no, but that's the reason, okay, you need to create the petition. So if it's a county road within a subdivision, that's more feasible for the commission to create that RID with 50%.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep. Yeah, because the county has an interest. You're maintaining the roads in the
Okay.
subdivision. It's taxing your resources. You don't have the money. So you, as the commission, can say, we just can't maintain this like we're supposed to. We're going to initiate the RID process within this subdivision. But where the county really doesn't have any jurisdiction, you're not maintaining the roads, you're not dealing with it, it's the landowners need to, put that petition together and come to you with it.
So we could roll out there, and use the figures that you mentioned. The bond council is typically anywhere from 15 to 20,000. How do we do, is it literally just a phone call, say to Jackson Murdo Grant, and say, what would you charge for bond council on a project of this nature? And they would give a bid for free, or would we have a fee for that?
Oh, just for how much you would know?
Initial, yeah.
Oh, they're really good. Like
Okay.
Nathan actually, and I'll forward you an email I got.
Detailed
Um,
email and
He's
documents.
super good he actually sent over samples of a recent RID they did for a subdivision.
Okay.
And he would, give you an idea of cost, so you would be aware of it.
Without a charge, because.
Yeah.
So my thought would be, if we've got to get all of these cost estimates together, I realize that's going to be a staff cost that is not reimbursable necessarily if they decide to not go forward with the RID, but I want to make sure that we're not incurring any additional costs, any outside costs, any engineering costs.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we could give you a cost. He would give you an idea of, okay, based on the size, you're gonna need 1% reserves or 2% reserves. My fee would be 12,000, if you're, based on, like I said, that price, if you're not selling bonds, you're just getting a loan for the improvements, or you're just building reserves, you're not gonna need a financial advisor. We're not selling bonds or anything like that, so there's not those additional costs. But if it's a big project we're doing up front, we're gonna have a financial advisor cost in there as well. So, you know, kind of based on what those landowners want, we could put together some planning level costs for them, and there's no charge. I mean, Nathan wouldn't charge, we wouldn't charge, you know.
Just to
get you-
put together the bid
just to
package.
get you help, you
Okay.
know, that, okay, landowners, you need to add another 20 or 30,000 to your cost estimate you get from a contractor, plus, you know, let's put some contingencies on here, because oftentimes they'll just go, you know, at a hell in a sand and get a cost estimate for paving, but as the, you know, the county, you're administering the project if it goes to bid, and you gotta do public bids, and there may be some increase in fees, so that petition, the dollar amount in the petition is what kills so many of those RIDs, because they're just not accurate in the costs.
Yeah, and that's what I'm envisioning. How do we get them a closer to real estimate of what their annual cost, what each homeowner or landowner's annual cost might be?
And I think as we go through them, we'll have more and more to fall back on that, you know, from our own, we send you the example of it, we'll have a better idea of the scope of work and what the actual costs are, the additional costs outside of the actual maintenance or improvement. You know, the more we do, the better, the more accurate we're gonna be able to be in the future.
Yeah, and communicating that with landowners, because they say, well, you know, we got a bid from BSC and this is what it is over the course of 2 years. I mean, you know, it's basic math over the course of 2 years and our 20 landowners, this is what it's going to be per person, and so we want to move forward. Can you take it to the commission? Slow down.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in theory, that sounds great, but that same thing can be accomplished through an HOA, through getting together and, you know, having cookies. I mean, you can essentially accomplish that same thing without all of this administrative costs that we are going to have to put in place.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's the exact sell right there, you know. If the commission takes this on, there's additional administrative fees that could be substantial based on the size, impact. So, you know, your first, as the subdivision, your first attempt should be getting the homeowners association together to just pay for these improvements. But if you can't, and you need help, then there's this process with the petition, and we can help give you some planning numbers to include in there, so you have a realistic cost associated with it. And then, yeah,
Okay.
keep advancing it from there, so.
But the reality is the homeowners association is likely not to be able to achieve it.
Which is
because-
why they've come to us
Right.
anyway. I
A
mean,
third
yeah.
or half of the people are like, I will be a broken record. I am all around the state. Homeowners associations are pretty dysfunctional. There are exceptions, but
So that would be a justification, right? My division won't come together to create an HOA and to pay and to get together and to figure out this maintenance. This is why we're requesting an RID.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But then you're going to have all of the overhead cost of bond counsel and.
But at 60%,
Mhm.
that's pretty much their fault at that point for not agreeing to an HOA to begin with, when it could have been that
Right.
much easier.
Right, they could be paying 200, instead they're paying 4 or 5.
Right, right,
potentially,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And-
Exactly,
And
yeah.
since you're not looking for improvements, you're looking for maintenance on your side, so that could be requesting a petition for a special district, which is only for maintenance, which wouldn't have a lot of the higher end costs in there, because you're just looking for maintenance and not improvement. So as you kind of force these people who won't even get together to do an HOA, the chance that they'll get together to actively protest in person, probably slimmer. Their on hook would be at a smaller dollar figure than if you're planning on doing mag or paving years down the road.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you're just looking at a fee to cover whatever maintenance per year split up by the number of lots, so it's
Right.
relatively small. Yeah, and if those folks aren't wanting to, I mean, they could come protest out, but just my experience, there's not a lot come protest out.
No, they
unless-
won't.
It's all tied to the dollar amount. I mean, if they get, you know, the resolution of intent, and it's, you know, the assessment's $6,000, of which, you know, they're gonna pay $1,200 a year in increased taxes, you know, on their tax roll, then people start considering. But most of the time, you know, these improvements and maintenance, I would say $100 to $300 a year, you know, when you, depending on the number of lots and how you split it up, so it's more palatable to folks. But I've seen some that it's $2,000 a year assessments, and
Sure.
it's back to the developer-driven ones. Those ones are, that's why we don't want those anymore.
Well, and the reason they did that is they didn't have to pay for any of the improvements themselves.
Nope.
Right.
So the county granted conditional approval, you gotta pay for the roads, great, gonna create an RID and
Yeah.
Well, and then of course their lots are more saleable at a higher price.
Yeah, they're making money,
Getting a
didn't
direct
pay.
benefit.
Oh, it's,
Yeah, that would be difficult.
But I thought you said that you're not, since it's a lien, you're not allowed to sell the lot unless the RID's been paid off. So even if the developer did it, if they're selling the lot, they would have to pay for the improvement.
They would, but they just add that to the fee,
Oh.
and their lot value went
Yeah.
up because they paid
So
for
they're
the pavement.
reimbursing or they're
Yeah.
recovering it regardless.
Yep. How it works is they come in and, you know, maybe it's not even a paved subdivision, but they get the subdivision approved, they get all the lots split up, and then they go back to the county and say, okay, we want to pave the roads now. And so, because they're the own control of all the lots, they have approval, they approve it at a really high rate for everyone else. They get the roads paved, so the value just increased, and then they immediately sell all the lots, and they just add whatever the assessment rate was to the lot value plus more, and they didn't have to invest in any of those additional improvements. So
Mm.
it's, the developers figure out lots of ways.
They're in the business to make money for a
Yes,
reason,
they
huh?
But that right to protest, you know, so they're,
So that
they,
eliminates
you know,
that, yeah.
that eliminates that, and it really puts it back on the commission. They could still come to you and say, we want to do this RID, but then, you know, you're evaluating essentially whether that district should be created or not, and you can consider those types of situations. Are they, you know, putting all the onus on all these lots and making money off of it? We're not going to approve it.
So the commission initiated one, basically you would have to have a very good maintenance improvement plan to be able to sell, and so that you can come in under your 50%. And so they can, the onus is make sure you have an attractive package to where you don't have people show up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because what's going to happen, they're going to come in and say, we're already paying our taxes. Why should we pay more money? And so you need to have this, okay, these are the benefits. Well, this is what you're getting out of it. You know, we're going to mag every 2 years. We're going to increase grading to, you know, 3 times a year instead of 1. These are the benefits. This is the maintenance and improvements you're getting with this. Yep. So that they can see the value of it.
So can I ask you a question as far as the actual maintenance? So say it's a subdivision road, not a county road,
Yep.
public road, subdivision road. RID is created. Can the county do the work? Or is it typically a private contractor doing the work?
It's typically private,
Okay.
because it's a little sticky, you're administering their RID fund. So
Mhm.
you know, there's, within the county's accounting system, there's RSID #1, you know, fund where the money gets deposited to based when people pay their taxes, and you get the money from the Department of Revenue, it goes into that account. So if the county were to do the work, you would be paying from that fund to the road department for maintenance on there. And so the auditors may have concern that, are you guys being fair to that RID fund on what you're charging them? So typically,
Okay.
it's bid out or contracted, because then it's the cleanest, you know.
So the only time that Josh's road crew would ever be doing any road work on an RID is if the commission created the RID on the county road.
Well, even in that case, you could still contract the work
You could
out.
still contract it, but that would be the only time that Josh would be required or potentially required to do the maintenance. If it was a subdivision road, a public road, subdivision road, we wouldn't go to
Unless there was a
Josh.
full RID department that had their own maintenance graders, and then they were only budgeted out of the
Out of
RID
this
fund.
fund
Yeah.
That
and
would be
not,
about the only way the
Okay.
county would be working on a public road and not a county road.
Yeah,
That's the only way I could see out of it.
I've seen in some situations where, like the assessment wasn't set up correctly initially, and so at year 5, we wanted to chip seal, and we didn't have enough funds in there to chip seal. but the county took on the chip seal, you know, and so the RID paid the county, bought the gravel, things like that. The county crews did it at no cost to labor, just materials and equipment basically, and it was cheaper for the RID to do that than wait another 2 years to have enough funds. So there are special circumstances, but generally on the maintenance side of things, it's a lot easier, and you don't have the resources, so you just contract out the snow removal, the grading, and then, you know, when you get to the bigger improvements, you know, typically those are contracted out anyways.
Well, and we do not want to be incurring a cost, I mean, because Josh, you know, I mean, people cost money.
Yeah.
So even if we're billing for the gravel, even if we're billing for the fuel in the machinery, even if you have an hourly rate that you can, you know, line item, we don't want that to be an incurring cost for the county for this road that may not benefit the entire county. Okay.
That's what I was saying, the only way I can see it possible is if the RID department, if you had an RID department
Yeah.
like Lewis and Clark, and they had their own maintenance section just for RID roads, where that way you're not using a whole in-county resource to actively maintain or improve a road that doesn't benefit all of the county.
And it's easy to quantify the human cost
Mhm.
because it's already established in that department as well as equipment and material. Okay. That's good to know too.
Well, I think one of the big things for us is that we're a very large county, and typically for years and years, all of our subdivisions were local right around town, but now we're seeing huge amounts of growth. South end of the district, there's gonna be a big subdivision on the east side of the lake, nearing the end of the county on that side. We've got growth stretched out all over the place. I can see how an RID on the implementation of those subdivisions that are farther outreach would be a huge benefit for my department, because we could afford to contract out the maintenance and improvements of those. Because right now, I mean, we have like Price Road and Rolling Glen, Wheatland, all the way to the extreme south end of the county, and it's hour plus trip and a grader at 27 miles an hour to get all the way down there.
Yep.
So,
And unfortunately, like that whole southern end, I mean, 10 years from now, all those roads are gonna be blown out, and those people are gonna be coming in saying, we need help with all of our roads within our subdivisions, and, you know, really, they should be starting now with some maintenance, you know, where it's cheaper.
Currently struggling
Yeah.
to keep up with the increased traffic down there. There's a large proportion of the calls I get just on that extreme south end.
Yeah.
We've got some ideas on how to make it better, but no solid future permanent plan for growth and improvement, where I think that, you know, this may be one of those areas that just the handful of county roads in there and RID, R&D would be of great benefit to the county and the residents as a whole.
Are you thinking specifically like Price Road, Wheatland Road?
And
Rolling Glen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be an area where you look at, you know, let's do an RID, RMD to start with, because, yeah, the benefits are, you just don't have the resources and personnel to get down there. And so the sell to them is, we're going to increase your level of maintenance. You know, we can subcontract out the snow removal, and so somebody's there more often than what the county can get there. We're going to increase grading. You know, maybe you look at doing double chip seals or paving the street, you know, roads later on, things like that, that they're getting a benefit for, they're paying for directly, and it's lessening your resources in that area.
Especially we have 2 additional phases of the Rolling Glen subdivision that may be going forward. So we're already currently struggling to keep up with maintenance, and now when you look at 2 full new phases with potential lots and additional traffic on the road, that could very easily become quickly overwhelming for the size of the department that we have right now.
So can you do something like, if you do this, you create a contract, can you do something in the contract that says like the first year or the first 2 years, we're gonna pay triple the amount, then after the first year or 2, then it's gonna go back down to say like $40 a year, because that's what people can afford. But like the first year you do 120, that way you can like start building that account faster. Can you do something like that?
I have not seen that done, typically we've looked at like if it's just related to maintenance, like a 5-year maintenance plan, and put together the costs per year over that 5-year period, and we add some inflation and say, okay, we need this amount, which is gonna cover the account over that 5-year period, and if you use some less the first year, you just have more in your account.
Okay.
I'm not saying we can't. There may be an opportunity. Well, I would say you can, because the commission can make the assessment changes every year, but you're selling it to the landowners affected within your resolution, and you need to have that cost associated with that. So they're going to just see $120 a year. I guess you probably might be able to add some language that in 2022 it'll be this, 23 it'll be this, and you lower it down. I mean, I haven't seen that done, but it might be a
The
possibility.
one proposal that the individuals we were talking about, that was what Brittany's describing is what they were wanting. They were wanting a higher proportionate share on the initial to get improvement in the MAG done. And then once that's done, MAG typically lasts 2 to 3 years. So then the year 2 and 3 cost would be lower, because we wouldn't be doing the mag chloride application again until year 3. So you'd have a larger upfront first year cost, and then you have a longer time to spread out that payment, an additional full year. So it would half at that point.
Yeah.
Is the general idea what those the individuals on that one subdivision road was, they were kind of requesting through their RID.
So in that case, it almost might be easier to do like a 10-year maintenance plan and say, okay, over that 10 years, we're going to mag 3 times. So our improvement is the mag, and we put a cost associated with that. So their RID side has this assessment structure per year for the 10-year period. And, depending on, maybe you borrow a little upfront to do the first year, and then the district pays it back to do year 3 and 9. And then they have the maintenance side of it to go along with it. And that assessment is just whatever you assess per year, rather than, kind of varying, trying to build it up and then come down. It's just a lot easier to establish those rates.
And then to try to loan the remainder of the upfront cost above what the initial first year's cost.
Yep.
It does, from a management size of that would be a much easier way to do it than try to balance different payments over different years.
Right, and trying to drop it down.
If there was the ability of borrowing the original upfront cost, and then you just have, it's no different than a vehicle or a house loan. You're borrowing against a large portion, and you have X amount of years to recoup said. So.
Yeah, you have 2 assessments, RID over 10 years, and that's paying for those, and then the RMD, and like I said, those get evaluated every year, but really it's typically pretty much the same every year, maybe a little bit more. You throw in a few bucks as needed on that side.
Yeah, but like on an established subdivision, I feel like it'd be an easier sell to be like, all right, look, the first year's gonna suck. It's like rip the Band-Aid off it. This is the higher cost, and then after that, then we'll go ahead and lower it back down for the remainder of the 10 years, or however long the loan's gonna take to.
Well, and what you're saying though is you'd be able to claim that upfront cost.
Take care, Daryl. Thank you.
That first big rip your Band-Aid
Come back
off,
and
it
see
would
if
be
you're still
that one lower portion, just to ensure that the maintenance and the future improvement is there. And then you would basically take the loan for that ripping the Band-Aid off cost.
Yeah.
So it's a flat rate the whole way out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to me, if I was in an HOA or a subdivision and I knew that I had to pay an extra $15 over a 10-year span versus paying an extra $500 that first year, I think it would be an easier sell at 15, a smaller increase over 4 years than putting that one big upfront cost.
Well, because also, is it paid by your mortgage if you have a mortgage and those property taxes are due?
That's out your escrow.
Yeah, escrow, I'm sorry, yeah. I mean, so it's paid through that mortgage payment that you're making.
It's a line item on your tax roll.
Yeah, okay.
It's not a tax. People like, oh, I'm getting taxed. It's not a tax, but it is a line item on your tax roll. It'll say RID number, RMD number, whatever, and it has your, you know, your half. When you get your tax roll, it's the amount that it's paid for over your 2 tax periods.
Okay.
And I think it'll depend if your mortgage has an escrow or if it doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if your mortgage, or if your escrow is paying your taxes right now, they're paying your
That's
taxes.
where it's
and,
coming from, okay.
you know, you're gonna,
It'll be
the
just-
bank's gonna send you that notice that your escrow's short and you need to increase your payments like they always do, but they'll cover it.
Every
So
year.
exactly-
$1,700 in Lewisburg County.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes. Okay. I have one final question going back to specifically Rolling Glen Ranch Road, which is a county road, Price Road is a county road, Wheatland Road is a county road. I don't have a map of our county, but essentially it's this, what is it, 3 square mile swath, maybe 4 square mile swath. Would we be wise to create that as an RID, or would we use, you know, because Price Road is the northern road, Wheatland Road is the southern road, Rolling Glen Ranch Road connects the 2, well, nearly.
It's a north-south in between.
Yeah,
the two.
that almost connects the 2, they don't quite connect because there's a subdivision in the middle of them. Would it be wise to create one big RID and just capture all of those residents down there? Or do you think we'd get quite a bit of pushback? Because there'd be people on Wheatland Road that say, I never use Price Road, it's out of my way. I mean, so it would be wise, most likely, I guess, to create 3 separate RIDs for each of those 3 roads.
I would do one RID
Okay.
with different assessment structures.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
breaking them
okay.
down,
Yep.
based on
Okay.
where they're out in the road.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's one big district, so it's easier to maintain on the
Okay.
county side. You have one big pool of funds, but within there, the assessments are the folks that live off of Wheatland are benefiting, and they pay this portion, and then these folks only use Price, and they're paying this portion, and
Okay.
these people in the middle can go either way, and so we're gonna do some other assessment for them.
So,
One
okay.
benefit we have for there is we do have the 3 funds that came off the
Mhm.
proportionate share of lots, so we already have nearly, right around 200,000 that we might be able to use that as the reserve for the assessment,
Yeah.
right? So we wouldn't have the increase there, so that would be something that we'd be able to lower down right off the bat, and
It's a
then
big
wouldn't have to
deal.
come
That
with
is a
that
big deal.
upfront reserve.
Yep.
Okay. That's good. I'm just thinking the benefit of, you know, if the commission ever decided to create that, to not have to piece it all out, that would be.
And I do feel, I feel they're concerned, because their roads do deteriorate, and especially with the road construction we had along the highway there, to be able to get a grader all the way down there through road construction. And we didn't do the hauling for gravel like we typically do, because it was such a time-intensive process, we just weren't able to accomplish the scope of work to keep up with their roads, so they did deteriorate. And if we had the money and the ability to run a special contract or a contract out that portion of it, it would be a huge benefit to both them as residents and us as the county. It would allow us to focus our resources a little closer to home.
How many lots are down there?
A lot.
I want to say, I mean, we're nearing 4,000, honestly, not built out, but there's quite a few.
I mean, if you look at just that lot size, and you assessed every lot $100 a year, I mean, there's a lot of money in maintenance improvements that can go into there. There's, you know, $300,000 to $400,000 a year in maintenance / loan repayment that you can utilize there. So, I mean, there may be an opportunity, and if I was thinking sell, like, you know, you sell these people on, we're gonna increase your maintenance, but we're also, you know, we need to pave these streets, you know, at 8 years from now, and so we're collecting reserves, and 8 years from now, we're gonna pay it, or we're just gonna borrow, we're gonna pave it all right now, and then, you know, repay it. But that's, I mean, that's an area where you see that. You guys don't have the resources to take care of the county roads. They're getting a high use, more development happening. You gotta do something there. And those are the circumstances where the RID comes in fixes, paves the road, the RMD supports that and increased maintenance behind it, and the landowners pay, you know, an additional tax, but not a huge amount, because it's split by so many lots.
And also, Old Town Road should be incorporated in that.
And that's same.
It's already a milled road, but there is, once again, we don't get down there for snow removal as we should, and it's a kind of a cut across road. It's getting a ton of increased traffic, and our milled surface, we're not keeping up with that, so it's already starting to deteriorate.
Yeah.
And a deteriorating milled road is a nightmare, and it's
Yeah.
a huge upfront cost when it hits that point of no return, and unless we start doing something with that, Old Town Road could very much be a large burden to there, so.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming there are tracks in there that aren't yet subdivided in that area.
Oh, definitely.
So, you know, including those up front, because you know they're gonna get developed eventually with the market pressures, and then you can theoretically capture that up front. So when they go through subdivision review, that's taken care of.
Well, and I think it's gonna be so important because we do have this upcoming TED district, that I just anticipate just a massive influx of development in that area with these undeveloped tracts. I mean, we're already starting to see it. It's inevitable. So to get a hold of it now, before it just keeps growing and growing and growing, I think is beneficial too, so.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now, one thing on the lots, the RID portion, it's assessed if we do per lot or area. I mean, the area circumstances are those trying to capture these future developments, because you're doing it per area. So they're paying more, but typically on the lot size, you have that big landowner that's gonna develop, he's paying one fee because of that, on the RID. But on the maintenance side, if he splits it up into 30 lots, when you reassess that, on the maintenance portion, you can include those lots in there.
Okay.
You can't include it on the improvement portion, because that is the lien, that he has to repay before he can ever subdivide that. But the maintenance portion, it's just a yearly assessment on the lot. If the lot splits to 30, you now have 30 assessments. So you have more money coming into there.
So whenever they create the county's actual RAD paperwork, can they put it in there, just say it's like per lot, and there's no discussion about how else it's gonna be assessed?
No, you have to, because you have to actually define every lot by geocode that is in the district on the creation of the RID. Yep.
And then obviously in the developer, we'll have 30 to 200 geocodes that are splitting out of that, but developer is only responsible for
Responsible
share.
for one.
Okay.
Yep. And which in turn he only gets one vote as well. And until the point like I said, on the maintenance side of the RID, you can include those additional lots as they happen.
So on the maintenance side of it, assuming we get that far, we've completed the RID, we're into the RMD phase, we're working off of maintenance money, those are perpetual costs. You said we should revisit those annually. Do those have an expiration date? How does it end? Do the owners of that subdivision then petition the county and say, we don't want to participate in the RMD anymore? Because you said it's an ongoing fund. It can't possibly just go on for eternity.
Well, the RID portion of it is established over a period of time, so
Right.
That one will have a sunset.
That one has yes.
Yeah, on the maintenance side, it's a yearly, the county reviews it yearly. And so, the landowners could come back and say, we don't want this anymore, we want it to go away, and then they could, resolve the district and it goes away.
Okay.
There is your auditors, if you're not spending the funds in your district account, the auditors will make you well aware of that.
Sure.
You get some grace period, but you have to have, there's a maintenance plan that goes along with it. It's pretty loose that we're gonna grade the roads and do this over whatever period it is, but typically you kind of have a 5-year maintenance plan. I've seen a lot of times with this, over this 5-year period, we're gonna do this, that's why we're charging this maintenance every year. And then at that year, 5 years, we reestablish that, look at the next 5-year maintenance plan and kind of go through that process. So you could do that, but if the county's not using the funds and they're just building, the auditors will come in and say, you need to spend that.
Okay.
So is
I
there
imagine
some
also the
like
people-
buyout program, like say they establish this RID with the maintenance and it's been, like they have this 10-year loan and say like after 6 or 7 years, they've got everything they want done. They don't want to do the maintenance side of it anymore, but they still have a loan. If you do that, they have to pay off the loan in order to say, hey, we don't want this anymore.
The maintenance doesn't have a loan, the improvement does, so that's what we're saying, and once the improvement's bought out, then you just have the flat rate for maintenance, and that's reviewed annually, and then after, if
gotcha.
you get to that
Okay.
point, and you decide you have the majority that doesn't want it, you can petition the commission to not renew.
But if you did have, so on the back end of it, if you were building extra maintenance funds within your account and your account's building, you could get to the end of it and say, hey, we have 3 years left on our loan repay and we have enough right now in this account to pay it off. The commission could decide to just pay it off. The account goes to zero, there's no money in there, but then the landowners are benefiting because they don't have, everyone's, their loan portion of the improvements paid off. So yeah, you have some flexibility.
So that's
there.
my question though, is once the RID portion is paid off, and so they've gained X amount of money in their RMD, and they decide they don't want the RMD anymore, what happens to those funds that are remaining? Is that proportionally paid back to the residents? Does that go to the county, or what?
The only I've never seen it go back to the landowners. I've never seen that situation happen. Typically what I've seen is there's built up extra reserves and the county's not using it, and so the auditors come in and say, you need to do something, and so then the county initiates more maintenance. Say, we're gonna go chip seal all your roads just because we need to spend this money down, and then at the same time, they lower the assessment because they don't need to build up so much. So they lower the assessment,
That makes sense.
spend down the reserve account, and then get back to normal operations.
I was just, because I can see once this starts and they get past the improvement, like if, especially with MAG's good for 3 years. So once they pay their proportionate share and they decide, well, life's good, we don't need this maintenance portion, but we don't typically, once something's MAG, you don't work it. You may do snow removal for it, so they're gonna be paying in for several years for maintenance, which we won't have much of a spend on. And then they decide they don't want to do this anymore, so now you have 2 or 3 years of funding in there. I guess at that point, we could MAG one last time to try to burn up whatever money is in that account, and then just say, all right, we're done. So
I think
want to
those
sit
could be
on-
worked out in the maintenance schedule and plan though, is, we're going to establish this, but over this 10-year period, we're borrowing this much money to cover the MAG, but year 1 and 2, we don't need to do it. We throw a few $1,000 in there for snow removal or whatever. And then year 3, we have some additional maintenance, so we put $10,000 on maintenance, and then we have 2 years of no maintenance, and we look at that 10-year that 10-year period of cost, and then we just put that down to a yearly maintenance. And so some years, yes, the account will go up, and then other years it will go down, but we try and count, take into account that process. Because what we don't want is, you don't want the account, you want it to be balanced. I mean, you don't want people paying a bunch more taxes and you guys just holding a big reserve of funds, right? We don't want that. And we don't want to overcommit and not charge enough and, them not getting what they expected in maintenance as well. So we really try, and that's, kind of on where our services and where we're helping, we're looking at the district and the lots and working with the bond council on the assessment and working with you on how, what are we establishing so we have a fair assessment, realistic assessment structure and such for the improvements.
So I guess for my department, what I really need to do right off the bat is we typically don't have, and we've never had to have an exact estimate sheet where we have X amount is our prevailing wage, including, because they based everything off of just hourly wage, but that doesn't include, I mean, you have to go off of like a Davis-Bacon prevailing wage, you'd have to have an exact equipment cost for every piece of equipment that we may potentially use, fuel costs, and so we really need to tighten up our estimating, which I'm very much used to that from my previous job, but we've been solely maintenance without RID, so we've never had to worry about it. We just had X amount of budget to run off of, and as long as we didn't go over budget, life was good. But they never figured out exact costs because we don't bid anything.
Yeah, yeah, and you would want to, because if you are doing some maintenance within that subdivision, or we're trying to establish that, you are, when you hit that road, those guys are being paid essentially out of that RID fund,
For
and so.
timekeeping for us to make
Yeah.
sure we're billing appropriate, to where we're not underbilling or overbilling that, or billing that fund. We have to have a set established rate for what we use for RIDs, which would include the total benefits package plus hourly wage, and then an average equipment cost to cover wear and tear on graders, rollers, backhoes, dump trucks, all the rest, and then the fuel cost. And then we would have to keep track from the second. If we were leaving to go down there, we would have our travel time, which is usually a smaller hourly rate, and then you'd have working time rates, but we would have to keep track by day, by person, how many man hours at this rate and at this equipment rate. So it would be from our accounting department, and this is where I can see very, very quickly, we would have to have at least an RID, a person staffed, because the additional work we're going to put on Michelle and Debbie would be very much overwhelming, because now we're going to have this day goes to this fund, or this many hours for this worker goes to this fund. And for our two-person accounting staff, I could see how it could get pretty onerous pretty quickly.
Yep.
Does Lewis and Clark County have just one staff person for this? Like, is this, they have
Yeah.
3?
Yeah, that's why Josh and I were like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We need to
So
talk.
I was at the county when they, so you remember Marnie Bentley? They hired Marnie, who's now retired, but they hired her in 2001 to officially take over as the first person to handle special districts, essentially, because at that time they had started taking on so many, and now they have 3, and 2 of them, one of them is the administrator, and 2 are construction folks.
Yeah, the construction, they have one on like the stormwater side and drainage type related issues, and then the road side of things, and then the administrator. As far as like tracking time, like FEMA has set rates for equipment and, with labor, so those are easy, we just say we had a grader and this size dump truck and such, and you track the hours. And then the county, you don't necessarily use Davis-Bacon, but it's your full build out cost, with all expenses and such, and we just have a rate per employee. But yes, it is time consuming, even on the, on your side, because, on X day, we worked this road, and so-and-so used this many hours, and we use this much equipment, and you need to track that, because you need to get reimbursed from the RID, it needs to, or the maintenance, it needs to pay you, so it's not just building money, and that's where counties move to just contracting a lot of that work out, so you're not having to do that, and like this, what we're talking about, you could establish this district, we contract out, pay for all the improvements, and then we contract out on a yearly basis for maintenance. So all you're doing is administering to make sure work is getting done, not having to do the work and track it and make sure that.
The time cards we used to use, actually Mr. Belger's nephew helped create them for us at my previous occupation. We had equipment code and a personnel code, and we had equipment rates already built into the time card, and we had project codes, so it's very easy. We have, like my road crew has road and bridges typically, and we have general fund, and then we have VARSA, so we could assign a project code for each one. So then when the employee does his time card, he just writes in whatever project code he hit, X amount of hours per day. You may have 5 different codes you hit for that day, or you may have 1.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to be, extremely extensive, but there are very simple ways to do it. And I remember enough about what James set up for us that it would be pretty easy to mimic a time card similar to what our written time, our paper time cards are. putting it on Black Mountain might be a little tough.
This has been extremely educational.
Thank you guys so
And,
much.
So much better than trying to read
I,
something.
and I
That's
think
why I
that
wanted to come
thank
down.
you.
I really
I'm
wanted
so
to.
glad you did. I really am. Because we were looking at it like, oh, it's not that, it's not that hard. We can
Right.
do this, right? But not capturing everything that's involved in it. We were really, 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 really dumbing down the RID process as a county, but because we didn't know. It's so nice to see that, it wasn't a matter of we couldn't figure it out. It's a bigger animal than what Josh and I can do at, 1/16th or 1/32nd of our time available to us, When I spoke with you at that planning board meeting, you said they had a staff of 3. I was like, oh, thank the heavens, we're not ignorant to this. We don't have the manpower, we don't have the time.
It's,
Not to mention we didn't have the knowledge.
it's a commitment. Once you start this process, I think you're gonna find they're successful, correct me if I'm wrong. It's just gonna build on itself,
Mhm.
but it's going to consume time and resources.
With our growth rate, I don't think we have any other choice
Right.
but to start down this route, and plan for our future growth and maintenance. But as right now, we're already going to, I'm going to be proposing something to the commission soon to increase the size of our road crew and reorganize our staff to kind of break into informal maintenance districts to where we can assign 8 personnel to X amount of the county, because we struggle to even complete minor upgrade projects as we currently are and conduct road maintenance at the same time. So we'll be creating a minor projects crew and a road maintenance crew, and then the road maintenance will each get an informal portion of the district. Not a maintenance district. We're just going to carve up the county and say you work from here to here.
Yep.
And then that'll still all just come out of the road general fund. It's not it's not a special district. It's just how we're organizing our staff.
Yeah, where the resources and equipment are at, and
Exactly.
different district areas.
And that's the Band-Aid on the bullet wound right now. And that's just to be able to try to, we have to have a plan for future growth. Townsend's not, or Broadwater County's not going to get any smaller.
No,
or
it's only gonna keep
anywhere.
growing.
You guys are
Great.
both ends. It's
I
gonna.
know, it's like we just
It's
slowly just
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
getting closer and closer to where, and I think we all know this, that, this is, it's coming, it's happening. How do we prepare for it the
Right.
best we possibly can? And for the citizens, the people moving here, they are discovering what we've already discovered, like how great it is to live here.
Yeah.
How do we keep up that quality of life for people?
Well, and I truly do feel for the residents when they call in and say, hey, our roads are falling apart. We've had an odd winter that we can't do. We typically, our roads are snowpacked now, that fills in a little bit in between the washboards. And we get the benefit of having a smoother road all winter. We haven't had that, but yet the roads are frozen up enough, we can't grade.
Yeah.
So we're constantly fielding calls about the way our roads are, and we currently don't have the personnel to keep up with existing amount, let alone plan for any additional. What you said, there's 8 more subdivisions on the
Yeah,
books.
that I have right now on my
Yeah,
board that.
there's no, even with this reorganization that we're going to do, when you add that many lots of extra traffic on the existing county roads, there's no way I'm going to be able to keep up, even with the new way we organize things.
I know, didn't you just say 4,000 lots?
Well, yeah, in the county, in the southern end, 2,000. When I was speaking about the 4,000, I was misspeaking about, 4,000 roughly available lots in the county, but there are probably 2,000 lots in the southern end of the county.
But
Well,
still,
honestly, it
that's
would
still
have been much
huge
easier to
amount.
me if all 4,000 were in, because then I could just say, okay, you stay here. But we're just gonna have
Right, yeah,
the
it's
additional
a little easier,
2,000
but-
on each side of the lake, all over the place, and which is what is on the books, both sides of the lake and extreme ends of the county, that we typically have been maintaining once a year, because there isn't existing, or there's not enough population to really make that maintenance worthwhile to do more than once a year. But now when you drop large subdivisions in single time maintained roads throughout the year, it's gonna create a nightmare for the maintenance. And
Ideally, they would have one subdivision road coming off of the highway, and then it's not even a problem.
not
But,
the case.
yeah, it's not the problem.
Well,
I
then
guess I have another question, one more.
Yeah.
What is about the average time from start to finish that these RDs are taking?
Oh, like, say when you engage the bond council from getting it created.
Good question.
They go pretty quick. I'd say it's probably 2 to 4 months, depending
Oh.
on how quickly you want to get going. There's the process is that you'd engage the bond council. We'd work on getting the district created and the assessment structure, stuff like that. So there's some upfront work. They work on the language of the resolution. Then you send out that notice of intent, and then there's a protest period, 30-day
30 days,
protest
yeah.
period. And then after the protest period expires, then the commission can create the district. Now, there is some timing associated with that because if you want it on the next year's tax rolls, it has to be by August, right? I think before August it has to be created, so that way on the following year's tax assessment, it's actually on there. And so if you miss those windows, it's that further year out, which going to the administration side, you can actually anticipate that. We can build, a year's repayment into the administrative side of the cost, so that way you have that reserve in there before you get the taxes. There's things like that. But it can happen fairly quickly.
I would almost argue the more time-consuming part is getting the residents
Yeah.
to buy in up front. If ever, if you've got them, you've got support, then boom, you can jump into that process. You wouldn't want to start that process unless you were pretty confident that people
Yeah.
are interested.
I mean, like the area we were talking, I think that would be a great large one to jump in, and it sounds, with a lot of lots, it's probably easier to split that up and make it more feasible. But what we wouldn't want is the county to invest the resources and get down the path if there's not support of that. The support, going back to the petition, do you do the petition, or does the county feel that the landowners are in support and we can do this? That's where you may never get a petition of 85% of the landowners, because they're just not, engaged enough to do a petition. But that they want to do something, and that's I can't say you should or shouldn't. That's you guys' feel on the landowners in the area and whether they would really support something.
But there's a time period to educate the landowners
Yeah.
about exactly what we learned.
Right.
Because they're just gonna think it's another tax.
Yeah.
So Nicole, I think for the one that we were talking about, the current petition we have, one of the things that we did currently all last year is almost all of our ID talk has been about dust control, because 748 miles of county maintained roads, the vast, probably 95% of that is dirt road. What we did last year is for residents that wanted dust control, the county went out and just made sure that the road was sculpted and maintained. So if they paid out of pocket themselves without having the county maintain it, they had a good quality road to drive on. That would harden a good surface. There was enough fines, it shed water to where it wouldn't fall apart. I still think that is an option that we can offer them. It's all the onus is on them. They have to do the legwork. If they want it more than just in front of their house, they have to talk to their own resident or their neighbors. They have to get the buy-in. They can figure out how to spread the cost between them. And then if it's a larger scale project, then I can see an RID being an attractive means. But for these for 9 houses, that's an RID is the administrative cost is going to be far too burdensome to make the project worthwhile. Especially for just dust control. If you were looking to pave that section of road and you were wanting an upfront loan and you want to spread the cost over 10 years, and I could see that, but for dust control purposes, I can't see how the $6,000 cost is going to be worth the bonding and the engineering for that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, Josh and I have been trying to communicate to them this whole time, that, what about an HOA? But They just didn't feel that they would have the buy-in on the HOA, but if they're
Well, they're
looking at.
adamantly opposed to HOA
Yeah.
because there's a current HOA for them out there, and they're, like you had said earlier, most HOAs don't actually follow through or work, and so they don't want, I brought up HOA in my discussion with them and received some pretty negative instant feedback and adamant opposal to it. So I think if we go this other route, then there's no way that the additional administrative costs are gonna make that a worthwhile
Financially, it just
project.
does not make sense in that case.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
you're looking at, a $5,000 project
Right.
potentially turning into 20.
If
And,
they were-
and spreading out that $20,000 cost over 9 residents as opposed to 5 to 9.
If they were gonna do
that's
the
okay.
perimeter road all the way, to
Right.
include Hawn and Cactus, the gravel roads all the way around the outside of the subdivision, or you could say this RID may hit everybody in the subdivision, because you're either gonna drive on the side of those Hawn or Cactus, because now all your perimeter roads have improvements, then I could see that. But for 9 residents, there's no way that
No.
that's gonna be a worthwhile proportionate share.
Yeah. Yeah, the only, and the RID does, this just not gonna work for those, but I mean, there's options, like maybe they don't establish a homeowners association, but they have, they have an account, a road maintenance account that just on the honor system, everyone pays into, and then they build up some reserves, and then they pay you guys, hey,
Right.
we got $3,000, can you come grade our roads for
Wait,
us?
so
So
that
I-
can happen, so you
Yeah.
can set up an account with the county?
No.
It would just be on their own, they're basically hiring.
Oh.
That's
Yeah.
why I had offered that to them and said, hey, you could
I know, I was like,
follow
what is there?
the Cactus
I don't know
Lane,
that.
open a bank account
Mhm.
and title it the Cactus Road account.
Yeah,
And then when you have the money in there to be able to do magging, the county will come out and do the actual gravel improvement to the road, to where if you want it magged for dust control, then at that point, you have the money, you call the contractor of your own accord, you set up a time, we'll make sure, give us enough heads up that we'll make sure that the road is at county standard, and we'll shed water and it has the right crown to it, and we'll make sure it's wet, so when the contractor comes out to mag, then the road is suitable and stable for it.
yep.
And I think in the future, I think for smaller roads or smaller sections, I think that would probably be a great option for us to be able to say, look, this other way is not going to be feasible.
No, if they don't want to create the HOA or the, established, president, VP, treasurer, all of that, like Josh and I were communicating, set up an account at the bank, and when you're at the grocery store, swing by and drop $20 in. I mean, I know that sounds very basic, but it has to be an organic, method, I guess, for them to be able to do this. I mean, if you involve the government, there's gonna be a cost. I mean, we can't do these things for free, and I think that's.
Well, and
When we do
Very
statute, I mean, we have to operate under statutory requirements, best practices, best accounting practices, best management, engineering, construction. That changes things.
Well, I did try to present, even with the HOA, we have another HOA at Missouri River Rendezvous on Toston Dam Road. We had an individual, went to the HOA, volunteered to kind of spearhead the whole thing, got the HOA to agree to do magging for dust control on the county road that parallels their whole subdivision, and they're going to use their HOA funding to mag that road. So
That's
I
great.
tried to show them that this
Yeah.
is,
Wow.
It can
this is
work,
an example
yeah.
of
It
it
works.
can work.
Yeah.
Somebody has to spearhead it, somebody has to, gain popular consent. And so that subdivision the parallel county road will end up getting magged this year. We'll do the gravel work, because that is maintenance, we'll bring it to county standards, so when they apply the product, they'll have a lasting road. So even offering that as an option to them, they were in favor of that.
But I think as long as these are your options, there's nothing else on the table.
Mhm.
These are the options. This is what we can do.
Yep.
We can do the big expensive one. We absolutely can do that. I mean, it's not saying we can't do the RID.
But when you're tripling your costs.
Right, and if that's the direction they want to go because they want to get the buy-in of everyone, okay, we can do this. But, you can maximize your dollars by just getting together and passing the hat. I mean,
Yeah, and informing them, I mean, if there's 9 lots and they can't even get together to upon, you know, those same
Right.
people that are fighting it are gonna come protest out, and if it's 5 of them, it's not going anywhere anyway, so there's, you know,
Well, they were struggling to get to the 60%. Well, when the protest comes, all you have to do is have 50% of the folks protest. You're never, if you're
It's
barely
not
getting
going
to
to.
60, you're not gonna force an RID if 50% can protest that.
Right.
Well, I think this is a
Okay.
lot of really good information. Before you adjourn, let me check and make sure we don't have any comments. Does anybody else have any questions? I appreciate
you
you
so
guys
much.
so
Yes.
very much.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
this
I'm glad that we
this
can
has
help
been the
out, so.
highlight of the month.
Yeah.
Just trying to, you know, because it
That's
has.
pretty scary.
I
know.
Jeez, Nicole, must be COVID or something.
I know, no, honestly, because this has been such one of those animals, I mean, that
Oh,
I have
yeah.
lost sleep over, like trying to figure out, how do we do this? What are we missing?
And our constituents.
You know, how do
are-
how do we help the people? I mean, because really, we are in a public service job, we're a customer service, and we get that. And how do we perform this job for the people so that they have trust in what we're doing? But we need to know what we're doing. We need to know that we're doing the right thing
Yep.
for the county and for the people.
Well, and it's helpful for you guys to have this kind of information before you
Totally.
took on this and then
Mhm.
realized it was far bigger than you could.
We've
Absolutely.
got a handful of residents that have been trying to petition for several years, and they're frustrated because it isn't implemented. And we didn't even understand what we were working with, or basically all of the extra rules and requirements for it. That, yeah, if we would have been able to go to them 2 years ago and say, this is not going to be a cost-effective solution for you, but here is X, Y, or Z,
Yep.
then I think our constituents would have been much happier, especially on this certain road.
Yeah, for
Is there
sure.
anything on that?
It's not pertaining to this discussion, so whenever you are prepared to finish this and have public comment, because I don't think that you had public comment.
What do you got?
So this is from Craig Burns. He says, with a meeting happening tomorrow for solid waste, have you discussed the continued waste of resources of having an employee let me start over. With a meeting happening tomorrow for solid waste, have you discussed the continued waste of resources of having an employee on site, as well as the continued inaccessibility of the satellite sites?
We've had discussions about that, and I guess with this one, I am currently working my 6-month budget review. I took over in June, so right now I have Debbie and Michelle pulling up my 6-month review. It'll give me a better idea of where we are on a 6-month spend, and I'm definitely looking for any option to be able to get us out of the hole as quickly as possible. And Mr. Burns and I have pretty much talked at length on that situation a couple times, and I'm looking at every option possible.
And solid waste board meeting is at what time tomorrow?
7 o'clock tomorrow night.
Perfect. Okay, that's all I have.
So we can adjourn at 12 o'clock, 11:58.
Want to talk about efficiency? That's 2 minutes. Right on.
Or save that 2 minutes.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, guys.